In 2020, we made the intentional decision to ramp up our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion by changing the way we approach storytelling. We went from telling stories about underrepresented communities to telling stories for, with, and by underrepresented communities. These are communities that have been here or that are growing, and they've always had a voice, but we have not always been listening as well as we should, or reflecting that as much as we should in our coverage and our hiring. Black Tennessee Voices emerged in early May 2020, but the murder of George Floyd that Memorial Day accelerated that work and made it even more urgent. That led to a special section on Black Voices, a Facebook group, and a Black Tennessee Voices newsletter. And Black Tennessee Voices Live Storytellers took place on September 20th at the National Museum of African American Music. Did anybody go to the event here? Yes. Learning lessons from this approach, we began laying the groundwork for Latino Tennessee Voices, which officially launched on September 15th, 2021, the start of Hispanic Heritage Month. That, mis amigos, was very much on purpose. But representation is something that must be year-round. 6 years ago, we started documenting the rapid growth of Latinos in Nashville and across Tennessee. The South has been the fastest growing region for Latinos. The 2020 census showed Latinos grew by 65% from the previous decade in Tennessee, and there was a population increase in 94 of 95 counties. In Nashville, the population has grown to nearly 100,000, or about 14% of the population. Over the last year, our mission has been one of representation, telling stories of local, Latino, Latina, Latinx, through the articles, photos, and videos of my colleagues, both at the Tennessean and across the entire USA Today network. We have also featured work by Latino journalists, including Stephanie Amador, who is here. Hey, Stephanie. And one of our former colleagues, Arcelia Martin. We've also featured work from our national team, and many important stories have been featured in the newsletter, from the court battle over the Deferred Action for Childhood Rivals program, the tragic Uvalde massacre, and the most recent scandal hitting the Los Angeles City Council. Those efforts led the Online News Association, a premier international journalism organization, to award the Tennessean its annual Excellence in Newsletters Portfolio Award for Black and Latino Tennessee Voices just this past month. But the most important work we do is local, and that's what tonight is about. 5 storytellers from our community have agreed to share a personal story and insights from their life. This is not a TED Talk, it's not a speech. This is sometimes going to be raw, vulnerable, and authentic storytelling. Our storytellers tonight, in order of appearance, are Janine Miralda Echeverria, originally of Honduras, a graduate student, immigrant rights and DACA advocate, and an equal chance for education scholar. I understand there's equal chance for education, folks, a lot of folks here. We have Fabian Bedne, originally from Argentina, the first Latino immigrant member of the Metro Nashville Council. We have Vienna Perez, originally from Colombia, a nonprofit leader at Conexión Américas, previously at the Sexual Assault Center, and now a Metro Arts Commissioner. We have Miguel Vega, who was raised in Mexico and is a regional corporate governor for the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. And last but not least, we have Ana Escobar, who was just elected to a full 8-year term as General Sessions Judge in Davidson County, the first Latina in that position. She has lived in Nashville since she was a child. Finally, please continue to support these events. You can subscribe to the Tennessean at tennessean.com/subscribe. I want to thank my colleagues, especially who are here supporting us. You support their work. They do tremendous events, and I hope you get to meet them throughout this evening. So now on to the storytellers. Let's welcome Janine Miralda Echeverria to the stage.
If there is anything I have learned over the last couple of years is that self-love is important. As I have grown older and been on this journey of self-awareness and acceptance, I realized that often the problem was me. I was trying to put myself in a box. I was putting this stress, and I was making myself someone I wasn't. And I realized that it was because people in society were trying to put labels on me, and I was trying to put labels on myself as well to fit in. Hello, My name is Janine Echeverria. I was born in Catacamas, Olanchos, Honduras. I am 23 years old, so I'm currently living my Jordan year, and I keep on telling my family I'm not getting any older. I'm staying 23. So I've been living in the U.S. my whole life. I come from a family of 6, my mom, my dad, my older sister, me, my younger brother, and younger sister. I have a little nephew as well, so being a cool tia or a cool aunt is something I love and enjoy. Like thousands of families, my family decided to come to the United States for a better chance of living, for a better lifestyle and better opportunities for ourselves. My family originally settled in Boston. So I love Boston. It has a special place in my heart. I have vague memories of living in Honduras, of my family members. So as a little girl coming into the big city, I was amazed. Like, we were taking the trains everywhere. We were using the bus, all these buildings, the architecture, the bridge, the Bay Area. I was just so amazed by the culture, the diversity. I was about 4 years old, living in the city, and I remember going to our favorite spots in Boston. We would go to the Salvadorian restaurant. 2 blocks down was Colombian food, Venezuelan food, and my personal favorite when my dad or my cousins would take me was Dunkin' Donuts. So I'm gonna tell you guys a story. So when I was little, I was very shy. I didn't speak a lot. So when I came to the United States, English actually became like my first fluent language. So picture this 4-year-old girl in Dunkin' Donuts walking up to the cashier saying, "I want iced coffee." My dad too. That was me. I loved going to Dunkin' with my family. I still get the same thing, iced coffee at Dunkin'. I went to a school that was very diverse. So I had 2 teachers, and I remember that they both spoke English and Spanish. And so coming into this new country, living in a new place, I just felt very welcome because I was automatically using my native language and my new language. I felt comfortable. I had classmates from all over, Colombia, Venezuela, Dominican, Puerto Rican. I wasn't the only Honduran either in my kindergarten class, so I remember that there was already a bond and a connection that way. However, it was not always like that. Eventually, my family decided to move to Tennessee. This was a big culture shock for me because I was often the only one of my skin tone in many of the classrooms I was in. The food was different, the accent, the scenery. I remember stepping into my classroom and I didn't get greeted the same way I got greeted in Boston. You know, everyone was like, "Hola, ¿cómo estás? What's your name?" And here it was like, "Hi, nice to meet you." But then I also got stares like, "Who is this girl?" And so it was very different for me because now I couldn't use English and Spanish in my classroom. I had to only use English. And even though there was no need to use Spanish because no one else would understand me anyways. So I remember I would often get made fun of because I would say things like, "Yeah, I shall do that," or my English was a little different. And so often the kids would like bully me or laugh at me. And then my teachers would, most of the time, jump into the defense and be like, "No, that's actually like the proper way to say it. She's just not saying it the Southern way." So my English was different. So I became a student helper in elementary school, and I would go around and help translate for the other new coming students. This was fun for me, but also stressful. So I would sometimes, be helping translate the homework to some of my other classmates, and they would say to me, "Well, why does your Spanish sound different than mine?" Or, "You can't even read Spanish. Are you sure you're from Honduras?" So I struggled with that. I went home and told my mom, "I am going to learn how to read in English, write in Spanish. I'm going to do it all. Like, I'm going to become fluent in both of those languages." And I'm still not, but it's okay. So the only book in my household that was in Spanish was the Bible. So me and my Spanish Bible became best friends. I learned how to read Spanish just so that when I went back to school and helped my other classmates, I could translate correctly. So throughout elementary school and middle school, I kept getting asked these questions like, why are you so dark? Why do you speak Spanish? Where are you from? Where is Honduras? Why are you so strange? Like, why is your first name spelled with a Y but sounds like a J? I remember going home and asking my parents, how do I answer these questions? Where was I born? Where's Honduras in the map? How come my classmates have never heard where Honduras is? Am I that different? So by the time I got to middle school, I had a script. I had a script. You know when you go to school on the first day and your teacher is like, all right, class, stand up, introduce yourself, where are you from? I had a script. Hi, my name is Janine Echeverria. Yes, it's spelled with a Y, but it's pronounced like a J. I was not born in Tennessee. In fact, I was born in a different country. I was born in Honduras. No, it is not part of Mexico. It is in Central America, completely different country. And then occasionally I would get asked follow-up questions that I was not ready for. So I would just kind of stare and pretend that I didn't hear them and move on. I kept moving up in school and struggling, trying to find where I fit in, what groups I felt myself with, where I felt accepted and loved. I had always been good at school. In my head, I had no other option but to be good at school. I knew that my family came here for a better future and so that I can get a good education. So I was always hard on myself. A 90, a 94 was not enough. I needed 100, if not 102. If it was an AP class, 105. That's what I was gonna get, no option. I thought I needed to prove to myself, to my teachers, to my classmates, that even though I didn't look like them, maybe I didn't talk like them, I was just as smart as them. I was approaching the end of my senior year of high school, and I was struggling with what I was gonna do in the future. A lot of my other friends, they had already decided what school they were gonna go to. They already knew that mom and dad was gonna pay for it, or they had won a scholarship for playing a sport. But I was trying to figure out how I was gonna pay for college. I was scared. I knew that I had good grades. I was top of my class. I was in every extracurricular activity that I could possibly do. And I knew that I was gonna go to college one way or another. I just didn't realize how challenging that would be. So, on June 15th, 2012, the Secretary of Homeland Security announced that certain people who came to the United States as children and met several guidelines may request consideration for deferred action for a period of 2 years, subject to renewal. This is according to USCIS. I am a DACA recipient, and like thousands of others, it has changed my life. I knew I wanted to go to college, and as a DACA recipient, that meant that I did not qualify for any financial aid or any government money. If I wanted to go to school, I had to pay for it myself. Okay, so this is another story. There was a bulletin at the front of my high school, right outside the guidance counselor office, where every senior was posting what schools they had been accepted to. So I would walk by this every day. I would see all my other classmates, and I had gotten accepted to Belmont, Trevecca, and a couple other schools. So my name was also up there, and those schools' names were also up there. But you got to put a star on the school you were going to. And almost everyone knew what school they were going to, but I did not. So a big part of my life is also my faith. So I remember sitting in my Bible class senior year, and I'm just sitting there like, God, why can't I find a bag of $50,000 outside? Why? That would solve all my problems. But that's not what happened. So I was sitting in Bible class, and I see this beautiful teacher walk in. I see that she walks over, talks to my teacher, and then she stands up in front of the class, and she's like, hey, if any of you guys want to go to college but aren't born here, like if you were born in a different country but want to go to college, you need to come see me because I can make it happen. And I'm like, whoa, 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 what is this model talking about? Like, what is she saying? So I walk up to my teacher afterwards, and I'm like, okay, who is this, and where can I find her, because I need to go talk to her. And so she was an ESL teacher. Her name's Lori. She's an ESL teacher she was an ESL teacher at Smyrna High School. And so I found her, and I talked to her, and I was like, hey, like, how can you get someone who wasn't born here into college? Like, what's the secret? Let me know. So she tells me about Equal Chance for Education, which is a nonprofit that focuses on providing equal opportunity to achieve the American dream by helping students with a college education. And I am like, okay, this sounds too good to be true. They're gonna put me through college? Like, what? And so I talked to Miss Lori, and she was like, we're gonna get you through college. And I did not believe her. I have to be honest. I was like, are you sure? Like, I did not believe her. And so she gave me the information, and she was with me through the whole process of the application. I was typing my essays in her classroom, getting the principal, I was in ROTC, so getting like the first sergeant to write me a letter, and all of this I did in her classroom. And she was not my teacher. This was not her job. But she was there for me the whole way. So I cannot tell you how many times I was in her classroom crying, happy tears, sad tears. Shoot, I was probably crying over like some boy back then, and she just welcomed me in her class and was loving and kind. So fast forward to graduation, it's May, and I passed all my interviews with Dr. Spalding, so I got the scholarship with Equal Chance for Education, and I enrolled into Trevecca Nazarene University. So this is when my advocacy journey began. I was like, why was it so hard for me to get this far? Why do people not know that there's amazing organizations like Equal Chance for Education that can help them accomplish their dreams? So I did some lobbying work with Forward USA, which is a bipartisan political organization that believes American families, communities, and economy thrive when more individuals are able to achieve their full potential, and they focus on immigration and civil justice reform. So I got to go to DC with Molly and a couple of other students from Equal Chance for Education, and we got to speak to members of the US Congress, the Senate, and share our stories as dreamers and urge them to pass legislation on immigration reform. I got to meet VP Kamala Harris back when she was a senator for California and share my story with her along with my classmates about why it is important that dreamers get a fair chance in the US. I've gone to the Capitol here as well and done some lobbying work on DACA and education at the state level. I was a congressional intern for Congressman Jim Cooper, where I learned so much from his amazing team that has served the 5th District and been so supportive of my community. I graduated with honors from Trevecca in 2020 during the pandemic. And I'm currently pursuing my master's degree as well. And so I graduated during the pandemic, and I keep on telling myself, you're gonna get a ceremony, it's all worth it, hang in there, hang in there. I work at BUMC in Brentwood, and I am the Mission and Outreach Coordinator. Working with our neighboring communities is just a true blessing. I love that I'm able to help our community on a local and worldwide level, and we really are doing good work. I would not be here if it was not without a lot of you, Molly, Dr. Spalding, Dr. Boone from Trevecca, my friends, my family, my mentors. You guys all believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. And you guys mean the world to me. And I will forever be grateful for all of you. And I know that I've made y'all proud because y'all tell me, and y'all love me for who I am, not for my accomplishments. Fear is something that I've had to live with, and that's okay. It's okay to have fear, but it's also important to have hope in your future and in your dreams. Do not let people define you or try to label you. Your feelings are valid and unique to you. And I have realized that there is not just one way for me to be Latina, not just one way for me to be female, not just one way for me to be Honduran, and not just one way for me to be American, just like there are many different Tennesseans and people here today. All of our stories are different and unique and beautiful in their own ways. And as you share your story and you hear other people share their stories, I just encourage you and remind you to remind yourself of your worth and to remind others of theirs. Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful, Janine. We have been preparing with these storytellers for several months now, going through several coaching sessions, and from the time they start a story, there's a lot of information they have because they want to tell about their life, but she got it down, so thank you so much. Thank you. Now, I learned in Nashville the hard way that there's a tradition that you have to name every single elected official who's in the room who's here. I think there's one. There's Sandra Sepulveda, the council member. Thank you so much for being here. Did I miss anybody? Okay. Pardon me? Oh, no, of course. No, I mentioned her. She's one of our storytellers. So yes, I'll name her several times tonight. But now, given that the funny man over there has made his comment, I want to call onto the stage Fabian Bedne, who's got a wonderful story to tell about his life.
Well, you guys can put your headphones now for 10 minutes if you don't want to hear. I would, before I start talking, I want to say I know a lot of people here, and there is a lot of stories in here. Nashville is full of people that have endured and have overcome so much to make it in Nashville and in America. So take time to get to know your neighbors, mostly the new American neighbors, because you will be amazed and impressed with every one of them. So I told David when he asked me to speak here today that I'm sure there were better people, but he insisted, and I love him, so I say, okay, I'll do it. But please consider talking to other people, even in this room today. You won't be disappointed. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a story that takes maybe like 40 years. I'm Fabian Bedne. I'm originally from Buenos Aires. I'm a porteño, and I love Nashville. Growing up in Argentina under a military dictatorship, it was frightening and violent. My older brother was disappeared by the government. My parents, as you can imagine, were always afraid. Mother wanted us to be safe. She was very worried for the other 3 brothers and sisters that remained. So one night after Darío disappeared, she asked me to help her to carry all Darío's books into the trash. So she burned all his library because she was concerned about anything in the house that will put a target on the rest of us. That's how it was to live under a dictatorship that was relentlessly going after anybody that they perceive as a threat. But I was 16, so I saved the book because it was a comic. And I don't know if I put my family in danger, but I just loved that book, so I didn't burn it. I never told my mom, but I kept it for many years. Darío was 4 years older than me. We share a bedroom, and we'll talk as brothers do about many things, girls and life and so forth. So he was drafted and started doing the military service. And during his training, his superior, like happens a lot in Argentina, There's a lot of anti-Semitism in the military. So they will harass him. They will constantly give him a hard time for being Jewish. So Darío, when he will get to come home, will tell me stories about some of the things that they will make him do. Like one day he said that his supervisor told him to get on his knees and tie the supervisor's shoes. And then when Darío was on his knees tying his shoes, the supervisor said, the surgeon or whatever, said, "I thought you Jews didn't bow to anybody." And Darío was telling me this story. I'm like, I didn't know we were not supposed to bow to anybody. I'm Jewish and I didn't know. So I learned something that day from an anti-Semite that you're not supposed to do that. Anyway, some months later, Darío was gone and I never saw him again. It's been over 40 years from the last time I saw him. So I was very afraid, but I was alive. And I wanted empowerment, but that was the opposite of what the military wanted us to do. They wanted us to be powerless and submissive. So I grew up in a different continent under a violent dictatorship where your books could implicate you. But as I grew up my life in the US, and especially in Nashville, I knew that people fundamentally matter. So I went to architecture school, and I was really good at it. On my last year of school, I was very passionate about architectural theory. I was taking this class, and I was a strong believer in engagement. I thought that if you engage people in the community to help you design the city, then it's a better product. But how do you do that when, if you go engage in a low-income neighborhood, the military will kill you, right? So there was an issue there about trying to live to that concept in a totalitarian regime. So I believe that urbanism is clearly better when it's shaped by people, and people are better when they shape their own city. So I started working on participatory urbanism, working with the House in Argentina. We started organizing in defiance of government. We helped create the student union in the School of Architecture, which wasn't a very safe thing to do. But we don't know at this point, but when we were doing this, it was the last year of the dictatorship. The military gave up the next year, and so I was very happy to get my degree under the democracy. A couple of years later, a friend of mine came to New York City, and she was working for this famous Argentine architect named Vignoli, designing this multi-million-dollar project in Manhattan. So she comes back to Buenos Aires, and she's telling me how this very famous architect working for this multi-million-dollar project had to actually check with the neighbors to decide how this building should interact with the cityscape. And I'm like, what? So they have to talk to the community? And she said, yes, it's a requirement that, when you do a development, you have to do that. So I thought, well, this is unreal, almost laughable. Regular people having a voice to design their built environment in America. So I wanted a piece of that. I needed a break. I was frustrated that under the new Argentina democracy, changes were not happening fast enough. I was inspired to pursue a professional scholarship that brought me to the US. I was first in Columbus, Ohio, working in a community development corporation in a neighborhood that had been left behind by the city, like many neighborhoods around the country. Lots of gun violence, drive-by shootings, but somehow I felt safer in that neighborhood than in Argentina. My boss and my mentor, her name was Sean, she ran the Community Development Corporation, and so we'll engage in conversations, our shared experiences, me as a Jew growing up in Argentina, she as a black leader in the US. And one thing that I can't forget is that in one of these conversations, she tells me that she didn't have the luxury of hiding her skin color. And that came up because I was telling her how in Argentina, I was raised to hide who I was as a Jew. If I didn't mention that I was Jewish, then people wouldn't know, or at least I hope that they wouldn't know. And so I was less likely to be harassed by my religion. And the same was true in politics and everything else. So this hits home with me. I think about the ways I tried to hide who I was, my background, my politics, my beliefs, and religion, sometimes successfully. As a Jew in Argentina, it was so scary, but I don't have to do it anymore. Or anyway, I chose not to. So I moved to Nashville, and I made the decision that I was going to try to be truthful and transparent, to stop hiding, to embrace my story, stop trying to fit in, and instead, I worked to use that voice I had, although I worked for a very conservative firm, an architectural firm, and my coworkers hide their politics. I just didn't. I was like the very open liberal in the office, surrounded by very conservative people. But I was also the only Jew. So this created some situations like we went to rural Tennessee to work on a project, and everyone bowed their heads on a prayer before the meeting started, and I didn't. I remember the Nazi had told me that I wasn't supposed to bow my head. Later that day, the next day when I saw my boss, I told him that I was uncomfortable about it. He told me that I should have bowed. I just said I wasn't going to do it. So I wasn't invited to future meetings on projects like that. And that happens a lot in Tennessee, and it's hard not to follow along, so you take a risk not going along. I had people questioning me, describing my ethnicity as Latino because I was white. In general, I had decided to do the right thing and not to worry about the consequences. So at some point, I decided to get more involved in helping my community. I wanted other immigrants to have it better than I did, to help them integrate and be successful. If I can make it better for the people that are at a higher risk, I'm also making it better for the rest. So I decided to use this power I discovered, thirsty to flex this new muscle, the things I read about and dream about under a violent dictatorship. Now they were possible. These tools exist. So I ran and was elected to Metro Council. I advocated for neighborhood participation, budgeting, and meetings. I saw the impact when people speak up. I wanted more of it. I wanted to see a work for people, the type of city we build influences how we live in it. So I ran for a large, but I didn't win. But then I got to work for the mayor's office. So I'm very happy now. I have a great family, a wife, 2 wonderful kids. I try to give back by serving on boards where I share my voice to make our city more inclusive and equitable, and work in the mayor's office where my perspective is valued on architecture and urbanism, but also neighborhood and engagement issues. Things like participatory budgeting, which lines up with that early idea of community engagement in designing the city. So I look forward to continuing to demonstrate that engagement and participation works. I am grateful for the opportunity to have found a way to accomplish what I was curious about so many years ago. And you know that it's all worth it when you see residents enjoying the results of their engagement. When residents that work so hard are getting an improvement, look at it with a smile. So my final words are, sí se puede.
And I don't want to embarrass Fabian too much, but he's celebrating a milestone anniversary this week, so congratulations to him and Mary Linden. So I'm very excited to bring up the next storyteller, Vienna Perez. She works for Conexión Américas. If you're familiar with it, it's a nonprofit that has been serving the Latino community for the last 20 years. This is the 20th anniversary, and I'm excited to bring her up to tell you her story.
Got this. Good evening, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. I'm honored to be part of the very first Latino Tennessee storytellers, along with this great lineup of people that have made such a great impact in the Latino community. I see friends here, which is not making me feel any less nervous. But thank you for being here. Thank you for wanting to hear a bit about my story tonight. This opportunity to tell my story came very timely in my life, as I am just starting to learn about my inner self, who I am, and what made me the way I am. I had to look back to the past 10 years since I came here. So 10 years ago, in 2012, I moved here from my Barranquilla, Colombia. Woo! Yay, costeña! Well, this is a sunny place, funny, colorful place where I was born, where Sofia Vergara was born, where my childhood neighbor Shakira was born. And I see your faces, now it's getting more interesting. I'm not gonna talk about Shakira. Her whole life is out there on the internet. Well, back to me. I came from Barranquilla. I was a confident woman, not second guessing, nothing like that. Well, little things, but really never had a struggle with self-confidence or self-esteem. So I came here. I didn't have a clear plan. I wasn't very worried about the fact that I didn't speak Spanish. But I was confident that I moved here, that I took the right decision to come and get married to my then boyfriend, sitting here. But I came and I did that, and I was confident that I only knew that I was gonna do my thing, smile, hold my head high, step out of my comfort zone once in a while. As it is said that once you do that, it will help you with your mental health because it's helping you to cope with stress and discomfort. So I did that. I was stepping out of my comfort zone. But I was still this loud Latina, colorful, kind of a joker, at times sarcastic. And I started learning English. So I learned English in the first years, enough to call myself bilingual. Or I think, at least, that's what I thought. I did mix words at times. Have this story. When I was pregnant with my first kid, I had a very rough night. I ate something, so I felt really bad on my stomach. But next day, I'm feeling fine. I'm going to the office, and I am on the phone with the nurse, telling her all about last night, how awful I was feeling. And I couldn't understand why this nurse was so angry at me for something I didn't make happen. I was just sick. But she kept being disappointed, and I'm like, what is happening? I'm just telling her that I think I was highly intoxicated, and that all of a sudden my coworker that thankfully was over here and came to me and said, Diana, I think you meant to say you were food poisoned. Oh my God. So my face is all red, and I quickly explained to the nurse on the phone, I am sorry, I mixed the words because where I come from, you say intoxicada or intoxicado when you are food poisoned. But please believe me, I'm a responsible pregnant woman. I am not consuming any substances and not alcohol. She was very relieved. But I learned English in the first years, and I want to stop here and be clear, because I don't want to make it sound that learning English is easy. It's not easy, especially when you are older, especially when you have many issues to overcome. And I want to stress this out, and I'm not necessarily talking about me, but all the immigrants and refugees communities that are out there that have to overcome financial issues, worried about their immigration status, worried about creating a home for their family. It is hard to learn English when you have to go through all these. So there you go. I just made an awareness comment here in the middle of my storytelling, but I think it was important to say it. I was revolving within the Hispanic community. I thought I was doing good. I was bilingual, but I was getting jobs at a Spanish radio station and at a Spanish newspaper, a nonprofit that served the Hispanic community. So I was kind of comfortable until I get this new job, the big leap. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know. I thought it was just another good opportunity, a bit of a challenging opportunity because I had to speak English all the time, which I thought, oh, this is great. I just have to speak English all the time. It's going to help improve my English, but I got this. So I get to my first day of job. All is good, and I went to this first meeting. Oh, I want to clarify what was my role. So I was in charge of doing the largest nonprofit event to raise funds. So my main role implied that I had to establish and strengthen relationships with all these group of stakeholders that I had never worked with before. Donors, major donors, community members, volunteering in leadership positions, all white people. None of them speak Spanish. So I go to my first meeting. This is at a very nice cafe in the town, owned by one of the chairs of the event. 25, 35 people in there. So I walk in, and I am like filled with this confidence and confident woman that I was. And I walk in, and I start trying to introduce myself. And the first lady came. I understood her name. And the next thing she said, I don't have any idea what she said. So I was trying to be polite. I smiled, walked back, and went to the next person. I didn't know what that person said. I couldn't understand. So I'm in this space full of people that doesn't speak Spanish, trying to mingle, trying to introduce myself, and I'm not understanding the conversation, so I start getting this anxiety, worried, what I get myself into, how I'm gonna do this work. I'm not understanding half of the conversations. But then I said, well, I quickly moved to the thought, maybe I'm just nervous. This is my first day, this is my first meeting, so just move on. The day went well, the meeting went well, I went home thinking, this job is gonna be good. I'm just gonna do my job, take my time to learn English, take my time to improve myself, come back home, be attached from work to my family. Well, as the job started and getting seriously, I started trying to follow up with all these ladies and emails and phone calls, and I realized so many words coming and going that I have never heard in my life. So much formality. So I started noticing that while I'm writing emails, I'm taking longer to trying to say my ideas. Everything is just, is it good? Oh, thank you. I'm taking longer to say my ideas, to write emails, and I'm getting this anxiety, second-guessing myself, and I start shutting down, going to this meeting, feeling that I'm not gonna say anything because it's gonna sound so dumb. I'm gonna sound rude. I just only know to be straightforward. I don't know many words. What am I gonna do? But then I was going to these meetings and people were talking about their personal life, casual conversations. I didn't have anything to say. This is not my world. I don't know about anything about horses and huge houses and all that and private schools. So I didn't have anything to say. I went to my car and cried many times. I started feeling that I don't look good. I started doubting how am I gonna look for each of these meetings, and this was every day at work. Phone calls, meetings, emails, small conversations. But then one day, I started realizing, wait, I just had a conversation with a coworker, and I think I felt good. I think I was kind of like fluent in English. And then I started realizing I'm feeling that I speak well when I'm comfortable with someone. So that wasn't really a language barrier that I thought it was. This was a culture shock. I just didn't know. Because when you are going through that, of course you don't know. You are struggling. And you are struggling so much, you have all this anxiety, and you left depressed at the end of the day. So it's affecting your life, family, and home. But then the only thing I knew, I'm not gonna quit this situation. I'm not gonna step out of a zone until it gets comfortable for me. That was the only thing I knew. It was hard. I'm talking about 3-4 years. But I made it because I started seeing little wins. I started seeing that I was doing a good job, and then I felt, oh, I got this, and quickly go back and say, I actually have a long way to go. And then again, a little win here and there, and then I feel, I got this, I can do this. And then again, oh gosh, it's gonna take me a while. Again, and so. But I wanna say that it wasn't just the little wins and the words of my mom all the time, you can do this, and the words of my husband and the words of my family. It was the people that surrounded me in this place was amazing people, the staff, the leadership, everyone there, even though they didn't have clear what I was going through, it was there for me. If I cried, nobody exactly questioned, they were just there. And not just the people on that present, it was the people on the past since I got to this place. I have a little box of tools that I've been gathering from past supervisors / mentors, people that is sitting here, their words, everything that I have been gaining, it just came to that moment, and I was using those tools. And so I realized, okay, I got this is culture shock, and I start working on this, and I'm feeling good, I'm doing a good job, and I'm grateful for the people that was there and the people in the past. I'm a mom now of a 2-year-old and a 2 and a 5 years old, and I'm trying to become the best role model. I'm trying to embrace this culture that I'm coming from. I never feed because I started trying to feed because I learned it's not about feeding, it's about embracing yourself and be confident of who you are wherever you go. So that's what I'm trying to pass to my kids. Yes, so here is a picture. The reason why I have this picture here, I also like to dance, and I never did it professionally in Colombia, but now here, even though I have my full-time job, I dance professionally, Colombian cumbia. This is Afro-Colombian music, and this picture here is a couple of weeks ago when Council member Sandra Sepulveda presented the resolution at one of the council meetings for the Hispanic Heritage Month and all the contributions that the Latino community have done to this city. And I never thought this was gonna be the best stage for me to dance Colombian cumbia. I thought it's kind of like very not a stage. It was the best stage. The fact that I was confident dancing Afro-Colombia, cumbia, in the middle of all this, thank you. In the middle of all these people that are making decisions for our city that probably have never heard about this music, never heard about cumbia, about carnaval, it was just amazing. This is who I am today. I'm comfortable in my skin, and I'm looking forward to keep learning and exploring the beauty of the culture here.
I can attest that Diana is an amazing dancer. Were any of you at the Latin party a few weeks ago for Conexión Américas? So you saw Diana dance, they're absolutely beautiful. Well, I want to now invite to the stage Miguel Vega, longtime friend, a real estate professional who has a very interesting story about transformations and identity. Let's welcome Miguel Vega to the stage.
Gracias. Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. Buenas noches. So I usually start every speech or every talk that I do with a fair warning for my non-Spanish speaker friends. Beware of the accent. I was born in Texas. I grew up in Mexico City, but lived 15 years in LA, hence the accent. So bear with me tonight. I think stories are journeys, are tales of evolution. So tonight I will try to share in a very short amount of time, 49 years of life, trying to condensate that in 10 minutes. I'll do that, I promise that to David. So bear with me if I miss some things here. But also, I want to tell you that tonight I've been inspired by the stories that we just learned. I see transformation, I see passion, and that's what I'm gonna tell you about. How life transformed our points of view, how life transforms also our perspectives. And I will start by telling you my story. I was born 49 years ago. And I grew up in Mexico City. I grew up as a Mexican kid, went to college there. I always feel attached to living in America. I always feel something about this country. I came to Texas as a teenager and realized that there were 10 different flavors of sodas here, while I only have 2 or 3 in Mexico. I realized that they have the coolest sneakers here, while I only have 1 or 2 colors over there. So I learned about choices, about learning more things that you will learn in your homeland. So from a young age, I realized that I like it here. The first thing that I did when I went to college, I wanted to pursue a career abroad. I wanted to find a way to move out of Mexico, actually. And I didn't know why, I just felt it. So after college, I graduated and I went to work for the Mexican government as a trade commissioner in Los Angeles. I came here in 1999, worked in LA, helped a lot of big companies to open their operations in Mexico, helped a lot of big Mexican companies to open their businesses in California, Nevada, and Arizona. And what I learned in that process was about connections. Was about that you might be talking to a governor, you might be talking to a CEO. At the end, we're all people. We all want to learn about each other. We all have needs, we all have interests. So just the fact that we are learning from one another just gave me a big lesson in my early stage here in America. So 4 years passed by, 5 years passed by, and then my time to go back to Mexico came. I got that letter saying, hey, your commission is out, you need to come back home, and then we're gonna send you to Brazil. So that was the time when I discovered, like, wow, do I really wanna go back? I was in a crossroads in my life. I was recently divorced. I have this early middle life crisis at that time, and I just started thinking about it, and I said to myself, I don't wanna go back. I decided to stay, and I communicated to my parents. I called Mexico, I called my mom and my dad, and just told them, you know what, I'm staying here. I don't want to go back. My mom told me, okay, really, are you sure about that? Like, yeah, I want to stay here. Okay, I'll send you something, I'll overnight you something. You'll open it up, and then we talk. What she FedExed me, what she sent me, was a package full of records from a hospital in McAllen, Texas. That record had my name, but that was not Miguel Vega Borges, which is my name in Mexico. It was Miguel Vega Jr. And for me, it was kind of shocking. It was my same birth date. It was old information, and it says that I was the chubbiest boy in the hospital. So it's like, wow, cool. I called him immediately. It was really shocking for me to have been living as a Mexican until that time, and then realize that I was born in Texas. I was born in a little town in McAllen. The reason I was born in McAllen is because I was so big, and I was the firstborn, that my mom's doctor, who was a Texan, he didn't want her to have this big kid on his practice office in Mexico, on the Mexican side. So he brought me to across the street, actually, at that point in the 70s. Crossing back the border was really easy, so that's what he did. He brought me to the hospital. I was born there. And then my dad was really afraid of me going to the war, or that there might be some draft, so Latino kids will go first. That was his mentality at that point, and he never thought about living in America, so he wanted to live in Mexico City, which we did. And that's how I became a kind of the incognito Texan in Mexico. I was then a diplomat, and I was very concerned about using a diplomatic passport and a diplomatic license plate for 5 years of my life, while now having a U.S. birth certificate in my hand. It took me a 2-day trip to Houston to get my U.S. passport. It took a lot of affidavit letters to the military to tell them why I was not elected, I was not enrolled in the selective service. But again, it took me a while. I'm telling you all these details because at that point in my head, what I was thinking, it was, this is so great. And also for me, it was an eye-opening experience. That transforms me. That that journey from being a Mexican in America to be a Mexican American really gave me a different perspective and made me appreciate all the troubles, and we heard it before, all the sacrifices that a lot of people do to be part of this society, all the journeys that are very hard, that are very harsh, and they happen day by day to make us be part of America. So for me, it was this jackpot time, but at the same time, a very sobering time to realize my responsibility now. Now I had a responsibility with the people that was like me, or that is like me, that they don't have the ability to just take a trip and get a U.S. passport. So I felt compelled to really help those first generation people, trying to tell them this, not only my story, but the way to be part of this society in a way that will make them better and make us better as a society. So I started working in LA, I started working in consumer electronics, I started actually pursuing a career, again, business relationship, business development, great friends in the industry. I started working for the Hispanic arm of Best Buy, started working for a lot of companies that were involved in consumer electronics. In one trip to Korea, I met this guy from Nashville. I was in Seoul, Korea, in the lobby of a hotel, and I realized that there was this big group of people having tequila shots there. That, of course, attracted me. And we were talking now really intoxicated. It was not food poisoning. They were really intoxicated. So that put me towards that group, and we started talking. This gentleman happened to be the owner of Electronic Express, who has their headquarters here, and we became friends from that day on, not only for the tequila, but we had a lot of mutual interest about buying refrigerators, buying TVs together, finding the best prices for the clients, all those things that retail has. After 5 years of friendship, he convinced me to come and visit Nashville. At that time, I had a 6-year-old daughter that I was afraid of having her growing in this big city. I grew up in Mexico City on a 23rd floor building with no backyard, with no friends. I had to only play with my Nintendo or my Atari earlier. I'm that old. And then I wanted my daughter to have a different life. So we decided to make the move to Nashville in 2016. And I started working for Electronic Express at that time. I started buying new media. I started buying basically everything related to new business. That was my job there. And sometimes it's not a good idea to work for your drinking buddies, because when you are sober, that doesn't work that well. You have to make hard decisions, and it's hard to go by. But the point there is that what I realized when I came to Tennessee is this whole Latino Southern hospitality compatibility. You know what? The food, family, and faith that you find in the Southern culture is really compatible with the Hispanics. And that's why we feel so comfortable here, because we find kind people. We find people that really want to learn more about us, and that feels really, really attractive, really good for me. I wanted to tell my story. I wanted to tell that I was happy here, and I would start telling everybody in California. And that's why probably you get this crowded 24th interstate, and because this is a great place to be at. And we're talking about voices, like Latino voices in Tennessee. Well, Latinos are thriving here because of you, because of the original Tennessean that have opened their hearts and their minds to us, that we are not only here trying to take jobs or trying to do something that is not good for us, but on the contrary, I think that the main element here is that Southern hospitality makes us feel really comfortable and makes us thrive. We talked earlier about how when you feel comfortable, you talk better. Even your English, even broken as it is, you make it feel better here. So it's really good to be here. The transformation that I want to tell you about that happens to me, that's kind of the last part of the story here, is I was thriving in Electronic Express. I was buying a lot of refrigerators and TVs. And then I met this gentleman from Murfreesboro who wanted to get into the Latino community. He had been struggling to find a good mortgage originator to reach out to this community. He's struggling because he owns this mortgage company, and the government is telling him, hey, you're not doing a good job lending to minorities. You are a suburban company based out of Rutherford County. There's nothing really happening here on the minority side. He hired a couple of bilingual LOs and loan officers, and that transformed in nothing for him. So what he was realizing is being bilingual doesn't mean being bicultural. Sometimes you can learn the language, but if you don't learn the culture, that won't go that far. And what I've seen sometimes is you don't need to be Latino to really embrace our culture, to really be passionate about it. And I see a lot of those advocates for the Latino culture that are not Latinos, and I'm very proud and grateful for them because that's what makes us thrive here. So what happened with this gentleman, he came to my office, he was a friend of a friend, he came to see me at Electronic Express, and we had coffee, and we talked, and I invited him tacos to be stereotypical and everything, of course. So he invited me to his office, and the first question that their board asked me is, are you Hispanic or are you Latino? And that was really funny for me because it was like, well, are you American or are you U.S. citizen? Because I feel like it's about the same. But really it's not. I mean, we talk about being Latino, we talk about Brazil, not being Latino, but not being Hispanic, but being Latino. So it's a whole discovery thing. After a lot of conversations with them, it took me probably 2 hours to get to them that Hispanic and Latino about not being the same. It's a great opportunity for them as a market. So at lunchtime, he told me, hey, it seems like you're doing very well in consumer electronics, but would you rather change people's lives? Instead of selling refrigerators or TVs, you could change people's lives. I said, how? How can I change somebody's life? Okay, through home ownership. Home ownership changes lives. And that was my aha moment. That's when I realized I had this responsibility that I was telling you earlier. That's when that responsibility came to me like a shock. It was like, wow, this is the time. Yes, I have that power now, and I have that responsibility. And since 2016, I've been grateful and blessed for being an advocate for home ownership, for being partnered with some of you here, a lot of you here, in creating more opportunities of home ownership, because I truly believe that having a home, having a roof, will make us better citizens, better community members, and will create this transgenerational wealth that will keep our big country growing and keeping America as big as it is. So my kind of last note here is keep being what you are, keep learning, keep transforming, never cease to look for the next big thing coming because it's coming for sure. Thank you so much.
Before you go, I do want to start something. It is your birthday. Can we do a quick happy birthday? I'll start. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Miguel. Happy birthday to you. Felicidades. Well, thank you so much for listening to these stories. We are now on to our final story, and I'm very excited about this. Judge Ana Escobar, the first Latina elected as a jurist to Davidson County, caps off this evening with a beautiful story about identity.
Good evening. I want to say thank you for being here. I see a lot of friends and supporters, and I'm very humbled that you're here. But my story is about Nashville and growing up in Nashville in the 1970s. So in the 1970s, no one really spoke Spanish. There were hardly any people who spoke Spanish. So you could go in public and speak Spanish with your family, and nobody knew what you were talking about. But the interesting thing is when people heard you speak Spanish, they weren't offended. They were curious, and they'd come up to you, find out more about you, kind of like that Southern hospitality that we've heard about. The other thing that amazed me is in the 70s, we didn't have anywhere near anything like Plaza Mariachi. In order for us to get food and coffee and chocolate and mixes for empanadas and, arepas, you either had to go to Atlanta or bring it back yourself from one of your trips, or you had to get it mailed. Which brings me to the 1980s. So I was one of the few, my family was one of the few Escobars in Franklin in the 1980s, so all our packages and mail were open, much to the disappointment of the U.S. Postal Service that there was only coffee in there. But, what amazes me is my parents' courage, because they came to Nashville, Tennessee, not knowing anyone, not having any family here. And this was before the internet. So they literally tell us the story that it was between Lubbock and Nashville. And my dad was trying to find a residency, and there was a doctor here at Vanderbilt who had done a mission trip in Colombia, And he really recruited my dad hard to come to Nashville. And I'm very grateful that he did. And somehow, like I said, my parents were able to navigate Nashville, figure out the good schools, and I'm in awe of my mother, frankly, to have to figure out American holidays, Halloween, 4th of July, Thanksgiving. I mean, can you imagine her hearing, you take this gourd that's called a pumpkin, and you carve a face in it, and then you stick a candle in there, and then your children go and ask strangers for candy. That must have been really blowing her mind, or to get the recipes for Thanksgiving, but she did it. And for that, I'm truly humbled that they had that courage. We were very lucky. We found a handful of Colombian families who also lived here and who had kids around my age, and they became our family away from family. And we celebrated birthdays and anniversaries and holidays and weddings, and sadly now we're celebrating funerals, but they are still my family. But my most precious memories as a child was when our parents would get together, cook Colombian food, and then toward the end of the night, they would start with their records or CDs or tapes, whatever the decade was. And we really take for granted our accessibility to music nowadays. But back then, it was like whoever had gone to Colombia would bring back the latest #1 hit in salsa cumbia, and I would watch my parents and their friends just dance the night away and reminisce and talk and laugh, and that was just a beautiful, beautiful memory for me. So my parents really tried to incorporate being Colombian here in Nashville. So my mother cooked rice with everything. Have any of you had that experience with spaghetti? We'd have soup in the dead of summer, and arepas and yuca and plantains. They also carried on the tradition of baby Jesus. So at Christmas, we also had the American Santa Claus, but then baby Jesus would bring us presents to the side of our bed. And the most important thing they did is they insisted that my brother and I learn to speak Spanish. Now, later on, I figured out that they taught me 1970s Spanish. So I'm kind of stuck in this bubble of 1970s Spanish, but it has really been invaluable to me. In Nashville, we were very culturally isolated. Even though we had those families and those experiences, we were culturally isolated. And I assimilated to Nashville, but I really didn't belong. Then in 1992, I went to George Washington Law School in Washington, D.C., and law school changed the course of my life. First of all, I went and I saw that there were Hispanic students that looked just like me and had that experience of being able to be Hispanic and not having to tamper it down. And so it was just a beautiful revelation that, oh my gosh, more people like me exist. Second of all, my love for advocacy was born, and I realized that I love to advocate for people. So, some influential things for me at that time was that I went to Washington, D.C. I'd never really left Nashville except for trips and vacations. And Washington was full of, people from other countries, restaurants from all over the world, festivals. It just opened my eyes. I also joined the Hispanic the Hispanic Student Association, and I would gather with students from all over the world. I started to be able to distinguish the different accents from the different countries. They introduced me to Hispanic music, Gypsy Kings, Menudo, all those great. And once again, we take it for a luxury that music is so accessible now. So law school just changed my life. So my first job was as a public defender. And a public defender is somebody who represents people who cannot afford an attorney in a criminal case. So between my second and third year of law school, I'm at George Washington. I'm just walking down the hall, and I see this bulletin board. Do y'all remember those? With a flyer for the office of the Public Defender's Office in Nashville. And they wanted a Spanish-speaking attorney. I was like, whoa, this is me. This is meant for me. And luckily, I came back to Nashville this summer, and I fell in love with criminal law. And I don't think I would have ever had another experience like that to have really captured me into criminal law. Also, I learned how beautiful and amazing and the big, immense responsibility I had speaking Spanish, and then I needed to use that to advocate for people. So the public defender, the elected public defender at that time, started to recruit Spanish-speaking attorneys. He had the foresight to know that we would need this. And believe it or not, that was a very unique concept at the time. Unfortunately, when I finally started working, I realized what they had been doing was speaking in English and kind of just yelling at people like, I am your lawyer. Obviously, that didn't work. And for interpreters, there were no rules, no testing, no code of ethics. So it was just like grab whoever you could. So I was so lucky to get that opportunity. And it is humbling to walk with somebody who is being accused of a crime, has no family here, doesn't speak the language, doesn't understand the legal process. And at that time was when Nashville started to have that construction boom. And a lot of the laborers were mostly men coming from Mexico. And they'd get in some little mischief here and there, after work, public intoxications, disorderly conducts, things like that. So here I am, 25. I don't know who was more scared, them or me, but we would go into court together and I would advocate for them. And that was just a mind-blowing experience. And as I progressed in my career, I was able to represent people with more serious crimes. But what was most important to me is that those people and their families understood in their language what was happening to them, because it's very scary. So Spanish, the ability to speak Spanish really strengthened my legal career, because I was lucky enough to have established attorneys who were brilliant ask me to join them on cases. And I was lucky that these wonderful lawyers respected me enough to allow me to translate and interpret for them, but also they'd let me weigh in on strategy and they taught me skills. So I'm very lucky. So my career advanced a little bit faster than most people's because of my ability. I switched sides. I went to be a prosecutor. And at that time, when I was starting off as a prosecutor, I was able to work on a serial killer that we had, a murder case here in Middle Tennessee, because one of the surviving witnesses was a Hispanic fast food worker, and he was the only witness to this serial killer spree that we had. And it was just amazing to me to be able to speak with this gentleman, understand what he had survived, and then walk him once again through the legal process. I was also lucky enough to help on the team that shut down this bonding company who was getting drug dealers out of jail. And then a month or two later, all of a sudden, these Mexican death certificates would appear, and they would die. Well, this kept happening, and then this judge realized, wait a minute, all these people are dying on the same corner, the same day, it's a different year. So I was lucky enough to go to Mexico and interview that clerk, and he explained everything, the process of how they did these death certificates, and there were definitely frauds. But I would have never had that experience had I not spoken Spanish. So I hope not only did I help victims and also people accused, but I have tried to influence the judges, the police officers, the other attorneys, and make them understand that because you can answer basic questions in Spanish does not mean you're fluent in a very nerve-wracking situation. Unfortunately, a lot of people think that. So fast forward 15 years later, I needed a break from law. So I was lucky enough for that elected public defender, then became mayor, and he asked me to be the Metro clerk. And the Metro clerk is the clerk for the council, and they're the keeper of the city's documents and records, bills, resolutions. And in that role, I kept seeing, all these wonderful leadership classes go through, Leadership Nashville, Leadership Middle Tennessee. And it dawned on me, if you don't know someone, you don't get access to any of these wonderful learning opportunities. So I approached the mayor, and with the zero budget, we came up with my city academy, and I'm very proud of my city academy. I am so proud to announce this is the 10th year. It has survived many mayors, and what the goal is to recruit new Americans and neighborhood leaders to learn about Metro government. So it's a 6-month program. You go once a month, and you learn about public safety, education, public works, and so you have access to these leaders, to these offices. And the goal was for them to take that knowledge and take it to their community, because knowledge is power, right? And the more you know, the less frustrated you're gonna get. And a result of that, which I never had dreamed, was that the participants started to network within each other. They were trading cards, networking their businesses, learning more about each other. That was amazing. Also, the department heads, such as in codes and stormwater, they started asking the participants, hey, how do we reach your community? How can we explain this better? So the city was learning. And the best part about this is now many of those people are on commissions for the city. So they are now serving our city. So I'm very proud of them. So the important lesson for me there is if an immigrant hadn't been sitting in the seat I was and seen a gap, and we hadn't had a great mayor who was receptive, none of this would have happened. And I hope that the program still continues. So finally, I'll tell you about the last kind of chapter of my life. So after working out of law, I decided to go back into law. And I went to the office of the district attorney, where I became team leader of the domestic violence unit. And I was very influenced by one Pat Shea, who is here, who was the executive director of the YWCA, and Philip. And my advocacy took a complete turn, and I became very passionate about domestic violence issues and human trafficking issues. But my greatest joy was, I interviewed hundreds of victims. My greatest joy was to be able to speak to Spanish victims without the interruption of an interpreter, the appreciation that sometimes people have to balance their safety in calling the police versus will their loved one get deported. So that's a heart-wrenching choice that people have to make. And I admire them for standing up for themselves and wanting better, especially when there are children involved. So I did that work, loved that work. And in Nashville, we have 3 domestic violence judges who do domestic violence 8 months out of the year. And in Tennessee, we elect judges, if you hadn't noticed. And an opening happened in 2018. And I thought to myself, well, this person needs to have worked with victims, understand the cycle of domestic violence. They should have worked with those accused of domestic violence so that they understand the other side. And this person really needs to understand other cultures, immigrants, and, cultural differences. And then I thought, wait a minute, if not me, then who, right? And so with the encouragement of many, many people, I quit my job. And for 3 months, I campaigned, which is the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm an introvert. I'm shy. I hate public speaking. But I did it. And I think I did it because I had the support of so many people. I can't tell you, I remember the very first time I campaigned, it was at a Kiwanis pancake breakfast. And it was horrible because everybody was eating their pancakes, on these round tables, and my campaign manager's like, come on, let's go interrupt their breakfast and introduce yourself. And I'm like, these people are eating. This is so impolite, blah, blah, blah. But those 3 months, I learned how to do it. And when you campaign, you end up being in a family almost, because everybody who's campaigning is in the same places that you are. So kind of the people who had campaigned before taught me tricks, made me feel more comfortable, gave me advice, so I did it. And the miracle, stars aligned, everything happened, and I got elected. And I'll tell you, it is such a blessing to be on the bench and to see when Latinos come into my courtroom and to see them visibly just kind of relax because they see somebody that looks like them. And it gives me so much happiness to be able to greet somebody in Spanish and say, good morning. Who's your lawyer? Have a seat. And then there are those rare occasions where everyone in the courtroom speaks Spanish, and we've had a couple of hearings in Spanish. That would have never happened in 1995. So we have come such a long way. And I will continue to advocate that our system in Nashville is vigilant about protecting immigrants while they're going through the process. Now, these people aren't expecting me to go easier on them. I'm not going to go easier on them, but I hope they know that they will not be judged for their differences or their inability to speak English, but by the law. So I am incredibly grateful to my parents that they took this jump of faith, and we are incredibly grateful to this country for giving us this amazing life. And what I've learned, as many of you have told this afternoon, is that you should be not just a mentor, but a champion. And I have a lot of champions that are sitting in this room. You have to champion people. You have to open doors, network with them, explain to them how you get to where they want to go. Also, there are so many people in Nashville doing great things in their neighborhoods quietly. We have a really kind and good city. And then finally, advocate. Even if it's something small at your job or, at your child's school, more than likely the people, at the higher ups don't even realize the effects of whatever rule they made is impacting people negatively. So speak up. You don't have to be a politician to advocate. You can do that in your own life and make other people's lives better. And it is a beautiful thing to be Hispanic, Latina, Colombian in 2022 in Nashville, Tennessee. But it took me an entire journey to realize that and to embrace how beautiful our culture is and what a wonderful, wonderful thing our language is. So I thank you all very, very much for listening to me.
May I call the other storytellers up just one moment? If you could all come on stage, all the storytellers, just come on stage. This is possible because of you. This is possible because of your investment tonight, your ticket. Invest in a program like this, where again, please come on stage, where we're not just telling stories about communities like the Latino community. We're telling stories with, for, and by. And these are the people who are telling the stories for us. So let's give them a round of applause. I think Miguel. I guess it's Miguel's birthday. He must be partying right now. But again, I want to thank you so much. Please subscribe to the Tennessean if you don't already do, Tennessean.com/subscribe. Let us know what you think of tonight's program. Let us know what you think of our coverage. Provide us ideas. You have reporters and journalists here who want to make connections with this community. And everybody, please have a wonderful night. Buenas noches.